simple RNN suffers from the vanishing gradients affliction. The consequence of this affliction is that long-term dependencies stretching back in time are almost impossible to learn. The back-propagated signal progressively weakens. Now, LSTMs have a conveyor, which is a kind of mechanism that will carry information forward in time, and the idea is the conveyor sidesteps this vanishing gradients problem. But the LSTM is quite a complicated beast. In fact, it's a really complicated beast. Let's start by revising three common activation functions. The sigmoid, the TANH, which is written mathematically T-A-N-H, and your old friend the ReLU. Here are some Python functions to calculate those activations, and here are the plots. This is the sigmoid, and we see it varies between 0 and 1 with a crossover round about 0, input 0. And the TANH, this varies between -1 and 1 with a crossover quite sharp around input 0. And of course ReLU you know and love, looks like that. Okay, so we have to talk about something called a gate. Now, a gate arises if we might want to turn an RNN off or on. So to turn something on or off, we could just multiply the activation by a binary switch and call that switch delta. So if delta is 0, delta times k is zeroed out, and if delta is 1, then the activation just passes through the switch unchanged. Okay, and the switch maybe should have its own trainable parameters so that it can learn to be on or off, just like anything else in neural networks. But backpropagation requires differentiability. And the switch, therefore, really should be continuous. We can't just jump from 0 to 1 because that's not a differentiable function. So the equivalent to a switch is a gate, and a gate can be half closed or quarter closed or a third closed or fully closed or whatever. It's a continuous function. And the sigmoid function, as we've seen a few slides ago, takes values in 0 and 1, so the sigmoid function is a perfect candidate for a gate. So a gated RNN is a sigmoid times the RNN output k, and the sigmoid has to depend on something, it depending on something called z. But what is z? We might want, because we are processing all these sequences, the state of the gate, whether it's on or off or somewhere in between, we might want this state to depend on the current input and the past activations. So z should be rather like our recurrent neural network. It's composed of w.x, where x is the input, plus u.a, where a is the previous activation, plus the bias. So therefore, our recurrently gated RNN is a sigmoid function of this wx plus ua plus b multiplied by the RNN layer output k. Well, that was quite a lot to take in. I'm afraid there's still more to come, and in some ways it gets even worse, so please hang in there. This is the LSTM pseudocode in 2 lines, but quite a lot really is happening in these 2 lines, so let's take it bit by bit. So, the memory is the gated previous memory plus the gated simple RNN, and the output is a gated TANH of the memory. Right, so output T and previous output, these are just the current and previous LSTM layer outputs. The LSTM has a